this video, I'm going to talk about absolute value equations. The learning target for this video, students will be able to write, solve, and graph absolute value equations. Absolute value just means the distance from zero. It just means the distance from zero, and you probably heard of this before. It's how far away a number is from zero. So if, for example, I had the absolute value of x was equal to 2, and I wanted to solve for what x could be, I'm looking for numbers that are 2 spaces away from 0, or 2 away from 0. One example of what x could be then is 2. 2 is 2 spaces from 0. There is another example of what x could be, though, and I could say that x could be -2, because -2 is 2 spaces from 0. So x is 2 or x is -2. Those are my two options for what x can be. And to see what I'm talking about on a number line, if I have 0 and I'm looking at something that's 2 spaces away from 0, to the right, that is 2. And if I'm looking to the left of 0, I have -2 is also an option. So 2 and -2 are both 2 spaces from 0. For solving absolute value equations that look a little bit more complicated than just that, here are the steps. The first step is to isolate the absolute value. Get it to look like this example. Get that absolute value by itself on one side. So I'm going to isolate the absolute value. What I'm never, ever, ever going to do is distribute and treat that absolute value like parentheses. So never distribute into absolute value, because it is not the same thing. Even though it looks similar, it's not the same thing as parentheses. So never distribute. Don't treat them like parentheses. For example, if I had to solve the equation 3 times the absolute value of x is equal to 15, actually that's too easy. If I had 3 times the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to 15, I would not do this and say, well, I have 3x plus 3 is equal to 15. I would not do that. These absolute value bars do not mean the same thing as parentheses, so do not do this. The second step is to write 2 equations. So you're going to write 2 equations, taking care of both the positive distance away, or taking care of the distance to the right and the distance to the left of 0. So you're going to write 2 equations just like we did here. The next thing, or the last thing we're going to do is we're going to solve and graph. Solve and graph on a number line. Most of the time, there are 2 solutions. So there are usually 2 solutions to an absolute value equation, most of the time. That is if you've isolated the absolute value and you got the absolute value of x, or whatever is inside of x, is equal to, or whatever expression you have inside, is equal to a positive number. So if you have the absolute value is equal to a positive number, there are going to be 2 solutions. If you have the absolute value of x is equal to a negative number, that is no solution. That's no solution because absolute value is the distance from 0, and you can't have negative distance. So the reason it's no solution if you see absolute value equal to a negative number is you can't have negative distance. Okay. The absolute value of x is equal to 0 if you see that, or the absolute value is equal to 0 of anything. It's only one solution. In the positive example, you take care of the positive and the negative. But if you just have 0, you can't do a positive and negative. So you only have one equation you can write to solve, and that is just one solution. For example, so here are some examples. If I have 3 times the absolute value of x minus 4 is equal to 5, the first thing that I'm going to do here is get this absolute value of x by itself. I'm going to isolate the absolute value. And that was my step one. In this case, I need to undo some things that are happening to the absolute value. And the way I do operations, or the order in which I do operations, is PEMDAS. So the order I undo operations is the opposite. So it's SADMEP or SADMEP. This is how I undo operations. So the first thing I'm going to undo is subtraction and addition. I see subtraction here. That's what I'm going to take care of before I take care of this multiplication. So I'm going to undo that subtracting by 4 by adding 4 on the left-hand side. I'm going to undo the subtracting 4. If I do that on the left, I do that on the right, keep my equation balanced. I get 3 times the absolute value of x is equal to 9. And then I want to get that absolute value of x by itself. So right now, I am multiplying by 3. I want to undo that. I want to undo multiplying by 3. That's divide by 3. If I do that on the left, I do that on the right. Now I end up with the absolute value by itself is equal to a positive number, is equal to 3. And I've taken care of step 1. So step 1 is done. I've isolated. So step 1 to isolate is done. Step 2, since 3 is a positive number, so since 3 is positive, I know that there will be 2 solutions since 3 is positive. So I'm going to write the 2 equations that I get from here. I know that what's inside is equal to positive 3, or what's inside is equal to negative 3. Because for the absolute value of x to be 3, x needs to be 3 spaces away from the 0, so it's either 3 or negative 3. This is, writing these 2 equations is my step 2 and part of my step 3, but step 2 to write 2 equations is taken care of. That's taken care of here. And then along with step 3, in addition to getting this answer, because I've already solved for x, I draw a number line, and on that number line, I am just, labeling 3 and negative 3. I don't even have to draw all of those spaces in between. I just need a 3 and a negative 3, and I shade on the 3 and the negative 3 because those are both solutions. 3 and negative 3. And this takes care of my step 3, which is to solve and graph. Okay. And step 3 is done. All right, let's do another example. So 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 minus 3 is equal to 3. Here I have an expression inside of the absolute value, not just x by itself. So let's see how that looks when we do that. First thing I'm going to undo is this minus 3, so I'm going to add 3 to undo and do that on both sides. I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to 6. From here, I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. I was originally multiplying that absolute value by 2. I want to undo that to get that absolute value by itself. Now I get absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to 3. From here, since 3 is a positive number, I know that I'm going to have two solutions, so I need 2 equations to solve. I am going to say that what's inside, x plus 1, is either equal to 3 or it's equal to negative 3. So those are my 2 options. X plus 1 is 3 or x plus 1 is negative 3. Then I'm going to solve for what x is, because now I know what x plus 1 is, but I want an x. So I have x is equal to 2, or I have that x is equal to negative 4. And those are my 2 answers. Oops. And I lastly draw this on a number line, so I have 0, 2, and negative 4. 2 and negative 4 are my answers. On the next page, I have example 3 and 4. For example 3, the first thing I'm going to do on both sides is I'm going to undo this multiplying by negative 4 to get that absolute value by itself. So I'm going to divide by negative 4. If I do that on the left, I do that on the right, I will end up with x plus 5. The absolute value of that is equal to negative 5. Well, this is a negative number. Can absolute value ever be negative? No, it cannot, because absolute value measures distance, and distance cannot be negative, so this is no solution. No solution because distance cannot be negative. For example 4, I'm going to first start by undoing that, multiplying by 5 on the left-hand side to get the absolute value by itself, so I'm going to divide by 5. If I do that on the left, I do that on the right. I get the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 0. 0 divided by 5, or 0 divided by anything is 0. And then I know that this is only going to have, since it's equal to, it's equal to 0, I know it's only going to have one solution, and I'm only going to be able to write one equation from here. There isn't a positive and negative of 0. So I just know that x plus 2 has to be equal to 0. And I am going to subtract 2 on both sides. And x is equal to negative 2 is my answer. And so I draw that on a number line. And I have 0 and negative 2. And I just draw a shaded dot on negative 2.